Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Oops. Get the chat. Hi, can you all hear me? Yes. Yes. Okay. All right, welcome back. Can you all see my screen? All right. Okay. All right. So yeah. So let's just review really quick the schedule. I know we went through this earlier this week. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So today we are kind of wrapping up the last lecture before we're doing the final exam next week. So today we'll keep talking about the project, just understanding what I mean by some of the requirements, and giving you clues of how to implement them, and also sharing with you source code that you are welcome to use for your own project. Later this week, I will make quiz 6 available. It will be about Mongo, right? So it'll probably be available on Friday, and it'll be available the whole week and the whole weekend. Let's see the question in the chat. May I know when the project review demo? The project demo will be the week of the 12th. So next week, yeah, that's what I'm going over. I'm going over the all the dates. So next week, the first half of the week, we will have a review of the exam, the second exam. And then the second half of the week, we will have a session for the final exam. And there'll be a live session where you can join, and if you have questions, you can ask me questions live while you take the exam. Or if you prefer, you can come in later the following day, or be available for a couple of days, and you can take it on your own. And so then on that weekend, so that's next week, right? So the final exam will be made available later next week, at the second half of the week, maybe on the 8th or the 9th. I gotta publish that first, and it'll be available for several days. So then the final project is due on the 11th, Sunday the 11th. So a week from this Sunday, and then this week, the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, so on and so forth, right? That will be the demo week. And the TAs is going to share with the class a spreadsheet where teams can register for different time slots where the TAs will be available for the project demos. And it'll be during this week. So the TAs will publish, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 different time slots per day where different teams can meet with a TA, and you can demo the project to them. They will be going through the requirements, right? Asking you to demo the requirements. They'll ask you, show me that you can log in, show me that you can go to your profile, show me that you can search through some kind of API, that you can create a one-to-many relationship, a many-to-many relationship, a relationship between a user and another user, a relationship between a user and a domain object, a one-to-many, many-to-many. So they'll ask you demonstrate, right, for us. They're not going to try and break your application, right? You're the one who's going to be demonstrating this. So they're not going to try to trick you or anything like that. They're just going to go through a checklist, and I will share that checklist. It's basically the requirements, the documents, but in a checklist format. I'll share with you that. I will share with you that later this week. And yeah, so again, some students, some of you will register for later in the week. Some of you will register earlier in the week. Even though I said that the project is due on the 11th, it's somewhat of a soft due date. You know, you're welcome to keep working beyond the 11th, even up to the minute that you are going to demo. Although I highly discourage you from doing that, since it's very, very common that folks break their demo right before they demonstrate it. So if you plan to do that, I would suggest you have a working version as a backup, right? So that if something catastrophic happens, you always have a backup that you can show, right? Because this is going to be a very, very busy week, and it'll be very, very hard to reschedule you if for some reason you have a catastrophic error and you can't demo on the demo date. It'll be very, very hard to reschedule you later in the week for you to do that. I mean, we'll try, but it'll be a very hectic and stressful event. Okay. Yeah. So that's the schedule. Any questions on that? Is it possible to reopen quiz 5 this week, please? I missed it accidentally. See me during office hours, and I'll reopen for you. Anything else? Okay, so yeah, as I said, we are going to go over the project. We've been building a prototype of a project using the theme of a movie, being able to look for movies and search for movies, and then like those movies or write reviews, be able to log in as Alice or Bob or Charlie, and then create relationships between them. Right. So let me show you where we are. Right. I'll go over the source code that I'm providing to you, and see how that can help you, and maybe you can reuse this for your own project, and then we'll demonstrate adding several other features. Okay. So here's where we stand. Right. So we have two browsers, right? So on the left side, we have a Chrome browser, and on the right-hand side, we have an Edge browser, right? They have to be separate browser brands, so that they are demonstrating that these would be completely two separate browsers, perhaps even running on separate parts of the world, right? One might be running on the East Coast, the other one might be running on the West Coast. Right? So these are two different users logging into the same server, right? And they are able to maintain different sessions, right, with data that is pertinent to each user. So on the left side, I'm going to log in as Alice, and the password is Alice123. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to log in as Bob123. Okay. So notice that the profiles, I'm being greeted as Alice here, and being greeted as Bob. So if I refresh on the right-hand side, notice that I'm still Bob, whereas if I refresh on the left side, I'm still Alice. Okay. And so this session is being maintained on the server. The server knows that I am Alice or Bob, and the way it tells that the requests are different is that each one is using a different cookie, right? And that cookie is being used as a key into a map, right? And then that map contains different sessions for different cookies, which corresponds to different users. And you can write in your application to make use of that map, that the session that comes out of the map, to store whatever you want in your session. And what we're doing is that we're storing the current user in that session, right, as Alice the object of having logged in as Alice. We're storing it in that session, whereas for a different cookie, we're storing a different object, right? Having logged in as Bob. Okay. So a couple of features that we added since last we met. Both of them can do a search, right? And both of them can search for the same movie site. So avatar here and avatar over there. In both cases, they're both hitting a remote server, the OIMDb server, right, to retrieve this poster and some of the meta information about the movie. And also notice that on the bottom, we have reviews that have been written by Alice, and some reviews are being written by Bob. Okay, and so both of them look the same on either side. But if I click on Alice here, or say I'm Bob here, this is Bob on the right hand side, and I can navigate to Alice's profile. And when I navigate to Alice's profile, I see that she has written 4 different reviews, right? And if Alice navigates to Bob's profile, she sees that he has written 2 reviews. You see that? Obviously, if Alice navigates to her own profile, she can see that she has written 4 reviews. Okay. So notice the way that we are retrieving the profile information about some other user other than myself, right? If I click on my profile, this is me. This is me. This is my private profile. Presumably, I would display things here that are private to me, right? That I don't want to show anyone else. But I can navigate to somebody else's profile. You can navigate to somebody else's profile, like Bob. I would see that this is his information, right? Whatever he wants to share. So the way we implemented this was that we created 2 different profile objects. We could use the same profile object. We could use the same profile component, and then make the component be smart enough to know whether it's mine or somebody else's, whether it's the same for the same user that's currently logged in, or somebody else's profile. We could do that, right? We can make it smart enough. Here we implemented with 2 different components, and we mapped the profile, right? This is my profile with no ID, and this is being retrieved from the user, from the server, right? What user is currently logged in, and that's what we're displaying here. But if I instead provide the ID of the user that I want to see, we created a new component called the public profile, right? That the user for that particular ID. Okay. So yeah, what we could do perhaps, right, is that we could combine the 2, right, and make them smart, so that if it's my profile, I display my my private stuff, right? But if it's somebody else's profile and that ID matches the current user, then I render both things, right? My private stuff and the public stuff, right? So we could make it either way, right? So I'm going to just go over real quick how this is implemented, just a little review from what we looked at yesterday. I just want to make sure this is one of the hardest topics. I want to make sure everybody's on board here, right? So real quick, there's the login screen, right, where you type in the username and password. So this is this is the web dev part, the React application on the left side, and let's put the server on the right hand side. And so we have the in the login screen, right? I can type in the username and password, right? I can submit it. I can submit the username and password to a thunk. The thunk calls the login thunk, passes the username and password to a service. The service posts that to API login, right, with the user object in the body, whereas on the controller, it's listening to that post, right, post login, and it's it extracts username and password from the body. It stores it in a local credential and then checks the username and password as their credential, see if there's a user with that username and password. If there is, then we put the existing user in a request.session current user. See that? That's the magic here of how the server is able to distinguish Alice from Bob, right? This session object right here, this session object request.session is magically behind the scenes. It uses the cookie that comes from Alice, right, to populate this, right? Whereas if it's Bob, Bob has a different cookie, so this request session would be populated from Bob's cookie. Okay, so this is actually taken from a map, right, behind the scenes, and that map is keyed off of the cookie value. And because Alice has a different cookie and Bob has a different cookie, this session is different when Bob comes in with his cookie or Alice comes in with her cookie. Okay, and then session itself is another map, so it's a map within a map, right? And that map you can put any key and put any value in that key, right, in that map, keyed up of whatever you use here as a string. Okay, we are using a current user to store the current user that is logged in, right? So here, and the way we log them in is by looking for that user by username and password, see if it matches. If it does exist, then we store that in the session. Store that in the session, and then we just return the existing user to the browser. Okay, so that the browser can also store the current user, right? So notice that the thunk, right, receives a current user right here, right? This one is returns the current user, puts it in the reducer, in the user reducer, in the login, right here, extracts it from the payload and stores it in a local state variable called current user, which initially is null. Now that the current user is available in the current user state variable, anybody can pull that out, right, including our profile, right? Notice that after logging in, right, it kicks us out to the profile. Oh yeah, notice that the login, right, it's sent this thunk, sent it out with this thunk, but it's still on the same page, right? At some point, this comes back, the current user gets set, and because the stage changes, right, it forces all the components to re-render. So the login screen, when it re-renders, it checks to see if there is a current user, which initially was null, right? It's null, so this is null here. But now this time around, the second time around, right, when the current user now has a value, right? If there's a value now, we don't render the login string anymore. Instead, we render the navigation component, which basically forces this to go to the profile screen, right? Forces this out to the profile screen. So in the profile screen, profile, we pull out the current user. Pull out the current user. If there is a current user, then we welcome them. Otherwise, we don't welcome them. Okay. Also, notice that the profile screen is embedded in a protected route, right? Remember that in the app.js. In the app.js, we protected the profile with this protected route, right? And the protected route, what it does is that it, in the body of the protected route, is passed to the component, to this component, and this component is going to check to see if somebody's logged in. If somebody's logged in, then they will let you render the children, right? The body. If not, right, if there's nobody logged in, then it will return null, right, or empty, and it won't render the profile screen, right? Or maybe kick you out to the login. So let's see the implementation real quick. Yeah, exactly. So it checks to see the current user. If there is a current user, then it renders whatever it's in the body, right? So it renders the profile. Otherwise, right, if there is no current user, nobody's logged in, it kicks you out to a login screen. Navigate to login screen. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of how we are being able to maintain multiple sessions and store different things, right, for different users. So we use this to implement a feature of creating, of maintaining different information for different users, right? One of the requirements in the assignment, in the project, was that you have to create at least one to-many and at least one many-to-many. Is it one or two? I forget. You know, it's different for the undergrads and it's different a little bit for the grads. I think the grads have to implement two of each, I believe. I don't remember. So here I have a review implementation where Bob is reviewing movies and Alice is reviewing movies. So Bob reviewed, I believe he reviewed Avatar, and Alice also was reviewing Avatar, and they kind of like having a conversation here, right, in the reviews. And then notice the linkage here of being able to navigate to the author's profile page, right? So I could see what reviews she might have written. She might have written reviews about other movies, right? Notice if we go to other movies, right? If I go to other movies, Batman. Oh, okay, yeah. So Alice did write a review about Batman. So yeah, so these were Avatar reviews, but this bottom one is a review of Batman. Okay, whereas Bob looks like he only reviewed Avatar. So all these reviews go back to the detail page, so you could see the review written, right, meshed in with the domain object details page. Okay. So this is what is meant in the project, that allows you to see content that is generated by other users in your own database, mixed in, meshed in with data that is being retrieved from a third-party API, right? And that if somebody wrote something, you should be able to navigate to that person's profile if you click on their username, right? And then in the profile, you should have a collection of things that are related to that person. So Alice, has all these reviews, right? Now she might also have other things related to her, right? Such as she might be following folks, right? Or folks might be following her. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate, implementing a few other things. First, let's see how reviews is implemented, and then we can implement a few other things. Okay. Okay, so let's see. So first of all, it starts off with this box here, right? That is implemented in the details screen. Right? So the details screen is rendering the details for each one of these movies. So let's see how that works. All right, so we have the details screen. So let's see, details screen. Yeah, details screen. I don't think that's it. Oh, there it is, this one. And the details screen renders the title information about the movie, also displays the director and the release. Right? So we talked about already that, right? So let's focus on the review down below. So the review is just here. Notice that the text area down below is only displayed if there's a current user logged in. If nobody's logged in, then it doesn't display, right? So this goes back to one of the requirements in the project, was that that the application should behave differently for folks that are logged in or not, right? That even if I'm not logged in, I should be able to use this page, or most of the pages, that certain features should you should only force me to log in when it's absolutely necessary, right? So for instance, if I'm not logged in, so say I log out and I search Avatar again, notice that it doesn't let me post my review, right? If I want to post a review, I need to log in, right? So that's what I meant. Now I'm an anonymous user, right? If I go home, it doesn't greet me, it doesn't know who I am, right? But still, it shows content, right? So only when I log in as Bob, and then I go and it's my avatar screen, then it shows me that I can post, right? Because I'm logged in. So that's what I meant in the requirements, that you should be aware who's logged in, right? And treat the anonymous user one way and then the logged in user a different way. So that's what I meant there. So anyway, so once I create the review, so so this is a click of search and I do Batman. I see that Alice has written a review, but then Bob can also write a review. It says, I love Batman. So he posts a review. I'm not sure why I wasn't showing that. And so these are two reviews, one written by Alice, one written by Bob. So how does that work? So here we have text area. We type in the review. We handle the post. We click on it. And then we send a create review thunk, right? The review that we just typed in, and then the ID of the movie that we want to review. Notice that we're not including here the ID of the user who's the author, because the author is the person who's currently logged in, right? Even though I have that information here, right, of who's currently logged in as the current user, I'm not passing it here to the server because the server already knows who's logged in, right? It would be redundant. So create review thunk passes that review object to the create review service, right? And the service posts the review to the review API, which is API reviews, and it sends a review object, right? On the server, there is a mirror image of a controller that handles the post of creating a review. See that? So that's the post that is receiving that review object, and it's calling create review. Notice that I'm following the naming convention, right? Whatever I use it on the client, this is on the server, on the React application running in a browser, right? JavaScript running on a browser. This is JavaScript running on a server, right? But I keep the same name so that I can keep it straight of who's talking to who, right? And the way they talk to each other is by sending HTTP messages. So anyway, so I extract the review object from the body. I see who's logged in, right, from the current session, the request session current user, right, that we added the current user in there when we logged in, right? So it remembers who's logged in here, right? I grab for the author, I grab the ID from here. I could have done it in the client or React application, but instead I decided to do it here on the server because the server knows who's logged in. So that's the ID of the author. So the object, the review object, is going to have the review text, the IMDb, right, which is a reference, is a unique identifier that references some movie object in the IMDb OMDB database, right? So I don't have that database, but I sent that information in my review. Also, it's going to have a reference to the author who authored this, right? The ID, not the object. We store that in the database, right, using create review, which does an insert, right, and then we get the actual object that has the review, and we send back the actual review. We grab it here from response data, and then this ends up in the reducer, ends up in a reviews reducer. So when we create the payload, we push that review and the array of reviews that are already listed there. Okay, that's why here it appears down below, right? When we create a new review, right, it appears down below. Okay. Then we just take those reviews and render them, right, in the movie's details. In the movie details, we can retrieve those reviews from the state, right, and then we just render them down below, right, as a map of list, line items of different reviews that are under there. And notice that each review is displaying the author and the username, which is, that's what we have, right? The username. Oh no, just the username. But then we wrap it inside a link. See that? We wrap it inside a link that encodes the author ID, right, in the URL so that we could click on it. We could click on the username and navigate to that, to the profile, right, to the user's profile, which is mapped to /profile and then the ID of the user. See that? So anyway, so that is mapped to a new profile object that I called public profile. Let's take a look at the public profile. So public profile is going to fetch a couple of things from our server. One is the user information of who's currently logged in. I don't I'm sorry, I know who's currently logged in. I'm navigating to somebody else's profile, right, which I have the ID. Now this could be the same person who's logged in, right, but not necessarily. So that's why we encode the ID of who you're navigating to, right, and so we're going to fetch the information about someone else, right? So I might be Alice, but I might be looking for information about Bob and Charlie and Dan or whoever wrote this review. Okay, so that's from my own database. The other thing I'm going to fetch from my own database as well is the reviews written by this person, right? So that's why this is where Bob comes in. This person that I'm looking for, who the author is. But then I want to know all the things that this person has written. So I looked at from the server. So let's take a look at this one first. So find user by ID passes the ID to a service. The service does a get, right, to the user URL /user/ID. On the server, right, we have a get here, right, that receives that mapping, right, user/UID, which retrieves the user by their primary key. So it grabs the primary key from the params, goes out to the database, passes the ID, and retrieves that one record by its primary key. And I don't want to show the password, so I use the second argument to define by ID to suppress the password, so that doesn't go out to the client, right? The controller, if there's a user, then we respond with the user. Again, this might be someone else who we're logged in as someone else, right? This is somebody else's profile. If we don't find it, we respond with the 404, right? So find user by ID, retrieves that user that we just got from the database, and we in the thunk, right, in the reducer, in the user reducer service, user reducer, there we go. When we find that person, find user by ID, we grab that user and put it in a state variable called public profile, right? And we navigate to the public profile. So we are in the public profile actually. Right, we are retrieving that user, and eventually we have the public profile, and we can say, and we can greet them. Notice that I've added kind of like a guard, right, so that if it's null, then it doesn't try to render the right hand side. So if this is not null, then it renders the username, right? Also same reviews, right? So if reviews is null, then this is not going to render anything until it has an actual value. And so that's where I get reviews by author, right? I give it the user ID, who wrote, what reviews has this particular person written, and then when it goes out to the thunk, goes out to the service, comes back, and it gets populated into the reviews, which then I iterate and display here. But let me show you real quick about getting the reviews by that author. So find reviews by author, goes out to the service, passes the author ID, and the author ID is encoded as a URL to go fetch the reviews for that particular author. Okay, so that is implemented here on the server. The reviews controller is listening for that, right? It's looking for given the author ID and you're asking for the reviews by that author. Once does it this way, right? It retrieves the author ID. It goes out to the database, give me the reviews that match that particular author, which is basically .finds. A find is going to turn an array of reviews. There might be several reviews for that author where it matches, right? The author. So the reviews have in the schema, and they have a an author field, right, that has the ID of the person who wrote this, right? So let's look at that real quick. If we look at the reviews model, if we look at the schema of the review, we have the review text, that, the actual text of the review. We're also storing the IMDb ID of the movie that we're reviewing. We have an author, right, of who wrote the review, and that's an object ID, right? It's a primary key in the database, right, that matches the user model, which is stored in the reviews collection. Okay. All right, excellent. So to demonstrate using this, all right, let's implement another many-to-many. So reviews is a many-to-many, right? Because one user can review many movies, and then one movie can be reviewed by many users. That's a many-to-many. Let's implement another many-to-many, but this time we're going to implement it between users, right? So there's several ones that we can implement. We can implement, one user sending a message to another user. So the message itself is a many-to-many, right? Because one user can message many users, but then another user can receive many messages from a whole bunch of different users. So that's a many-to-many. Another one very common is following, right? One user can follow many users, but then one user can be followed by a whole bunch of other users, right? And usually we should be able to view both sides, right? So if I'm looking at the sender, or the one who's following, I could see all the people that person is following, right? But from the side of the person who's receiving the message, the receiver, or the one who's being followed, right, I can see, right, a different set of messages, or a different set of persons who are following me. Okay. So let's implement that relationship between users, right? That's another thing about the requirements in the project, right? You have to create relationships between users, and relationships between users and objects, non-human objects, right? And I believe a relationship between two non-human objects as well. I don't remember. Okay, so let's implement follows. Let's implement follows. So the way it would work is that here is, for instance, well, who am I? Let's see, I'm Alice, and by chance I navigate to Bob's public profile, right? I see that he's written all these, amazing reviews, and says, "Ooh, I want to, tag this person. I want to, bookmark this person, right? So that I remember that this person writes really great reviews. I want to come back to them. So instead of finding them by chance, right, as I randomly navigate through the whole, millions of movies, right, and I find Bob, instead of having to find them this way, or having to memorize my ID, this ID, instead I'm going to bookmark him, right, and say, "Ooh, I'm going to follow this person." Okay, so let's create here a follow button, right? So for instance, in the public profile, right, we could create here a kind of like a button, right? Maybe here that says follow, right? So this is a button, and class maybe button, and button success, right? So I'm going to follow this person, right? And maybe we can pull that user to the side, maybe that button to the side, so this would be floats. There it is, right? So if I click this, I'm going to follow Bob, right? So let's do that. Let's see. We're going to handle the click for this, right? So maybe have a const handle follow button, right? So if we click this, we're going to say on click, handle. Or did I spell it wrong? Handle. Let's be handle follow. Okay. So we need to create a relationship between these users, right? Of who's following and who's being followed, right? So the follower is the person who is currently logged in, and the followed person is the person who I'm viewing right now, public relations. So here we have the ID of the followed, right? And now the follower, I already know that on the server. The server knows who's logged in. That's the person who's following. Okay. So we'll need a thunk, right, to create this object, and we'll dispatch to that thunk, right? So let's create a service that does this, right? That's for this. So let's create a directory for the follows. So follows, and so here we'll have a service that allows us to send or post the person who we are following, right? So let's do that. So we'll see, we'll do, follows service, right? And here's where we're going to put all the URL requests, right? So we'll create an API. So we'll say const follows API, and this will be something like HTTP : local host 4000 /follows. Okay. And let's make this a little bigger. There we go. And so here we could do a function that we can run. This will do maybe export const, and this will be follow user, and we'll pass in the followed user ID. Okay, and so we're going to post. Now we're going to post using Axios. So let's import Axios. So it says import Axios. Now for Axios, we do need to participate in the cookies, right? It's passing the cookies back and forth. So we need to create we want to create with credentials. So let's do that. There we go. And now we can do a post. We do, always this will be an async. This will be an await. So the response is going to come back as API dot post. We're going to post because we're creating a new piece of information that I am following this person. So post is appropriate. Right? If we are retrieving who's following me, then I would use .get. Okay. So where are we posting? We're posting to this URL. So we're going to say the URL. So this is going to be the follows API, and we're going to append the ID of the followed, right? Followed UID. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Follows. Okay. And then the response is going to come back with we're going to just return maybe something on the chat. Is there something on the chat? Missing away. Oh, thank you. Yes. And so we're just going to return the response dot data. Perfect. Okay. All right. Let's see. And then we'll need a thunk for this. So let's create the thunk for this. Oops. We'll need a thunk for this. So likes, follows. Let's create the thunk for this. So new JavaScript is the follows thunks. This is only so that we can dump that data in a reducer, right? So we'll do const, what do we call it? Follow user. So follow user, and this will be export const follow user. We're going to create an asynchronous thunk who is going to have a unique identifier, and the function is going to do async. It's going to receive the user ID, and we're going to call the follow user. Oops. So this is follow user thunk. Follow user thunk. And here we're going to call follow user the service. I'm going to pass in the UID, right? And so we're going to await that. And so now we can put it in a reducer, right? And in the reducer, we're going to create a follows reducer. We'll dump all that data. And so we'll do here a follows reducer. So we'll need to do const follow reducer. We're going to create a slice where we have the name follows, and then we have the initial state. It's going to probably be something like follows as an empty array. And so this follows will have different meanings depending where you are, right? If I go to Alice, the follows object is going to include the people who are following Alice. Okay. Although, let's see. Actually, it could be two different lists, right? It could be that I show the people that are following me and the people that I'm following, right? Yeah, so probably I want to keep track of both, right? The people that I'm following, the people that I am following, and the people that are followers, right? So following is the people that I am following, and followers are people that are following me. Okay, I'll have them in separate arrays. And then what else? We need the reducers, the extra reducers. Will be those thunks that we created. So this is follow user thunk if it's successful fulfilled. Let's see. This will be state action. Okay. So if I am looking at Bob and I follow, right? If I follow, that means that his profile should show a list of the people that Bob is following, plus another list of people that are following Bob, right? That means that if I just became a follower, then the list of followers, Bob's followers, should all of a sudden increase and say, ooh, now Alice is following you. So it would display right there. Okay. So we can append to that. We can say followers, right? We can say state.followers on the chat. Say question on the chat. What's the difference between state, action, and payload? Yeah, so it's just a convenience. So for instance, I could just say here payload, right? So I could do this. Let me show you. So if this is action, and I can say follower, right? Dot push. I'm going to push into that array the action dot payload. And what's in the payload? The follow object that came from the server, correct? Right? So I could do that. So I know that the payload contains that. Or I could destruct payload from the action object and just use that instead. So I could say payload, destruct that, and just use that instead, like that. Right? Equivalent, same thing. Yeah, wherever you see curly bracket, right, and you see an object like that, is because it's a destructor. If you're using it, yeah, if you're using it as a parameter that's being passed to you, right? Somebody's passing you an object that contains a payload, right? Parameter. Yep. And I mean, we've been using that quite a bit in whenever we're passing an argument to a function. Yeah, very common. All right, so follower. Okay. All right, so let's try this out. Let's try this out. Okay. So notice that if I am in Bob's public profile and I follow Bob, his list of followers should increase by 1. Me, I'm now following. And now if I go to my profile, I should see that my list of people that I'm following, right, should increase by 1 because I am now following Bob, right? So those two should happen. So yeah, so let's do that. Let's so we posted. We need this reducer. Now we have to add this reducer. Let's do that. We need to export this. So we'll say export default, follows reducer dot reducer. And in the app.js, we need to include that as a brand new reducer. So we'll do follows dot follows reducer. Okay. The follows reducer, which we imported here. Okay. There we go. So yeah. So now in the public profile back here, we can now dispatch here. And when we click on the follows button, we can say dispatch the follows user. I'm going to follow a user thunk. I'm going to pass an object that says the followed, right? The followed person is a user ID, and the follower is a person who's currently logged in, right? And the server has that. I mean, I have it too, right? We could retrieve the current user here, right, and pass the ID here, but the server already knows that I'm logged in, so I'm going to the follow object is going to contain 2 references, right? The person who's being followed, which is this one, and it reference who the follower is, right? And that I'm going to do on the server side. Okay. All right, so let's try it out. So obviously this is going to fail because on the server we don't have the controller for this yet, right? So this is absolutely going to fail. So if we go network, right, and I follow, it's going to give a 404. Right. Also notice that the object, I'm passing an object, so that makes no sense. Follows. Oh, okay. So I can go thunk. This is the UID. Oh, okay. That UID followed. So this is follow object. Follow object. I'm passing follow object. Right, and this is the followed object, and this is the okay, yeah, we could do that, right? So this is the follow object, and I am maybe I'll just encode that in the body. So follow. There we go. I'm going to send that as an object that includes who's being followed. Right, so let's try it again. Obviously, it's going to fail still, right? Because we don't have a controller for this. But I just want to make sure that I'm sending the correct thing. So I'm going to follow. There we go. So we get 4.4, correct? Yeah. There is no follow controller. But I want to see that I am sending the object followed with the ID of the person who I'm looking at. So this should be the ID of Bob, right? If I go to someone else, it'll be the ID of someone else. Okay. All right. So let's go focus on the server now. We go in the server node here. Let's create a controller to handle that. Right? So let's create here a follow directory follows. And we'll use a controller. So we'll create here JavaScript. We'll say follows controller. And it's going to be something like, const follow controller. We'll receive the reference to express, and we're going to do a post. So we're gonna receive a follows, post, right? Just like that's what we're sending. We're sending a post to /follows. So there it is, right here. And we're going to have a function here, const, that handles this. We'll call it, create follow. Actually, what did I call it on the client? On the client, I called it follow user. So let's use the same name here. Follow user, which request response. So I'm going to retrieve the follow object from the body. Request that body, which includes the followed, the person who's going to follow, who's being followed. Now the follower is in the session, the current user. So let me grab the current user from the request session, and we had stored it. It's being remembered on the server here in the current user session. Okay. So I can add to the follow object. I can add the follower. Will be the ID of the current user. Okay. And then I just need to insert it in the database, right? So it would be something like we'll need a DAO, right, to store this in a schema and blah, blah, blah. So let's create that. Let's create the schema for this. So it'll be something like JavaScript. It'll be the follows schema. So this will be, we'll need a mongoose. Import mongoose. And we'll create the follow schema will be mongoose dot schema, and we'll have two references. One to the person who's being followed, right? Will be a type, will be a reference to the schema dot types dot object ID. So it'll be a primary key data type. And it's a reference to the user model, right? The user model. So it's referencing things that were created with this model here, that with this schema that is stored in the user's collection, right? So is this, I need to use that same name here, right? That has to match exactly. And the other thing that we are going to have a reference to is who is doing the following. So he's the follower, which is also a primary key referencing a user in the user model. And all this is going to be stored in a collection called the follows, right? And we're going to export the follow schema, right? We'll need a model for this. So let's create a model real quick. So we'll see, this will be the follows model, which we'll import mongoose. And we'll also need the schema. So import the follow schema. And now we can create the follow model, which is going to be mongoose model. So this is follow model. And this is the follow schema. Okay. So we export the follow model. Okay, now we need the DAO that can actually use the follow model to insert that record, right? So we'll do that, and we'll call it the follow DAO, which is going to grab that model. So this is the follow model, and we can now create const follow user, which is going to receive the follow object, which we are just going to insert. Right, we're going to just say follow model dot create, and the follow object is already in the correct format. Right, it's already in the correct format. It's it matches by followed and follower. Right, followed is being populated by the React app, and follower is being populated by the controller. Right, in the controller, we add the follower of the ID of the current user. Right, so I am populating this, whereas follow is being populated by the public profile, right? The followed. So the object already has the correct format that we're going to store in the database. All right. Okay, so here's the controller. We need to export this. So export default follows controller. And then in app.js, we need to import our brand new controller. So import the follows controller. And then we just have to pass it the reference to app. So follows controller app. Okay, so let's restart the server. Now, when we restart the server, our login session will not be valid anymore. So we're going to need to log in again, right? So yeah, so let's do that. Let's make sure the database is up and running. Database is running. I do not have any collection called follows. We're going to insert our very first follows from our React application to the node, right? To insert this, and then we can check to see if it's being inserted correctly. So let's head over to restart the server in the terminal. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to restart. And on the client, if I refresh, this is still running, but I need to log in again, right? So if I go to login, notice that I don't have the profile tab anymore. So I'm going to log in as, let's say, I'm going to follow Alice. So as Bob, well, as Alice, I'm going to follow Bob. Right, so there's Alice. So again, Alice 1, 2, 3. So log in. So I'm Alice. Let's see. I found Bob. I can navigate to Bob, and I'm going to follow. Okay, so let's make sure that we are sending the correct information and that this doesn't blow up. So let's follow. Let's see. Follow. Still give us a 404. What happened? Post localhost 4000 follows 404 is the server. What do we do wrong? Let's see. The chat has a check the controller import. Check the controller import. Let's see. Follows. Here's the controller import. Blah 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 blah. Follows controller. Yeah. I don't need this. Follows controller. Oh, yes, I see. And my sub model. Yeah, I know. We forgot to map this. We need to map this, right? It wasn't being actually handled, right? So yeah, let's restart the server. We need to restart the server. So terminal stop, restart, go back. And let's see. Oops. There we go. And so let's so this still thinks I'm logged in, but I'm not, right? Because I restarted the server. So let's log in as Alice again. So Alice 1, 2, 3. Log in. Okay. Let's let's go to Bob. I found Bob, and I'm going to follow. Let's clear this out. Okay, let's follow. Okay, this time we didn't get a 404, but we have a pending, right? So it looks like we never returned anything from the controller. So let's go back to the controller. Let's see what happened. In the controller, we never returned anything. Oh yeah, we didn't do anything with the DAO. We wrote the DAO, but we never did anything with the DAO, right? Anyway, so we have the follow object. We have to do the DAO to actually store this, right? So we're gonna do an await async. We're gonna do an await. I'm gonna say const, follow the actual follow object that we just inserted. And so we're gonna do an await DAO. We need to import the DAO. So let's do import everything as the DAO from the DAO object that we just created. So the follow DAO, there it is. And so we could do DAO dot follow user, and we're going to pass the follow object. Okay, so now we're going to send back the actual follow. So we're going to say response dot send back the actual follow. Okay, so let's restart the server again. Okay, this is called incremental prototyping. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's refresh, log in again. And this is Alice123. Log in. Search avatar Bob. Let's look at this guy and let's follow Bob. Oh, on the chat. Why don't you use Nodemon? The thing is that Nodemon would automatically restart, and sometimes I don't want it to restart because I have a session going on, and it restarts and it clears my session. So I want to have a little more control over that. But yeah, definitely, if I don't have any state related things, then definitely I would use Nodemon. Thank you. So let's follow. Let's see. Okay, so it came back, and so that's what we sent, and this is what came back, right? That is an object with both user IDs, right? They're different. And let's see the database. Let's refresh. Refresh. Where was the refresh? It's not showing it. Am I using the correct? No. Connect. Disconnect. Let's connect again. I think it's here. Follows. There it is. So follows has these guys here, right? There we go. So but notice that it's not rendering anything. So we never actually rendered anything here, right? So let's grab, but we did push the follow object we just created into the reducer's followed state variable, right? State array. So we should render that here, right? So let's go into the profile. Let's go into the profile, public profile, and have different sections for, you know, who's following and whatnot. So we could say maybe this could be H2, you know, followers, right? And maybe, and following. This is, so, or maybe, you know, one is more important than the other. So following is the people that I'm following, and followers are the people that are following me, right? So I think we just populated that in the reducer, didn't we? Yeah, follower. Oh, this followers. Okay, no, that didn't work. But yeah, we should have seen that. We should have seen that, but we didn't. But that's okay. Let's go and maybe now, if I leave this page, right, and I come back, one of the things that I would like to see here is I have to go out to the server, knowing that I'm looking at this particular person. I have to find all the people that are following this person. Yes, so let's do that. We need a URL where we can find out the followers, right? So let's do that. So in the public profile, we have a placeholder, right? And we want to go fetch all the followers for this particular person, right? So we need an endpoint for doing that, right? So let's go to the service, and we need to have two endpoints, right? We have to say, you know, export. Oops, what happened? What was that? Oh. Export const followers. So find followers, right? By user ID, or find followers, right? And I will pass the followed user ID, and I'm going to go out to response await, you know, API dot post, and this could be I don't know that this URL, I like that URL. I think I preferred something like this is the user API, so this is users API. And so I like to be able to say something like users API, and then followed by, so users, then you give me the user ID, and then followers, right? I think I like that API better. So users, I give you the ID of the user, and then I want to know the followers, right? So this followed by followed like that, and then followers, and that would give me the followers of this particular followed person, right? And then const, I'm going to response, I'm going to return response dot data. So this is going to be an array of people who are following, and then find following, and this would be the follower, right? And so if I give the follower, you will return the following, right? So who's the follower? And the people that I'm following. Make sense? Okay. And then in the reducer, we could populate all these things, right? So in the did I export these guys? Oh no, those are the services. We need the thunks, right? We need the thunks. So let's create the thunks real quick. The thunks. So this will be. I'm just going to copy this. So there's find, what I call it in the service. I call it find followers. So this will be find followers thunk. Find followers, and this will be followed, find followers, right? And then something very similar to find following thunk, right? And this would be following, and this would be the follower, and this would be follower. Okay. And then in the reducer, when these fulfill, right, the find, so find followers thunk fulfilled. This will be, state, the payload. So this is state dot follow first is equal to the payload, right? The array, and the inverse is true. If I do the find following thunk, this will be the following array. Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah. So now in the user interface, in the profile, I like to render these things. So here I want to render. I want to extract from the follows reducer. I want to extract the followers and following. So we could do const followers and following, extracted from the use selector state that follows. I think that's what I called it, right? And in here we're just going to render it. Let's say render the followers and the following. Right now there's going to be just raw arrays. I don't know that you can find followers. Oops, find. Ooh, I think I copied wrong. Where? In follow thunk. Follow thunks. Oh, I'm missing find followers here. Okay, right now those are empty arrays, so they're not showing anything, right? But we should go and retrieve them. So let's go out to the controller and do these things, because these endpoints don't exist. Right, so those should be we should be getting lots of 404s, right? Because oh yeah, no, we never actually called them, right? We need to call these thunks, right? So we can call the thunks. We can say dispatch, find followers thunk for the user ID, right? That's going to give a 404. And we also want to do the find following thunk. So I'm going to find who's following me and who am I following, right? For that user ID that I'm visiting, right? Obviously, it's going to give you a whole bunch of 404s. because the endpoints don't exist, right? There's no, oh, and these are, we are reading these things, so they should not be posts. They should not be posts, they should be gets. So we are reading and reading. There it is. So here's my followers and following, and obviously they're not mapped to, there's nothing in the controller for these, so I'm getting a 4-4. That makes sense. So yeah, so let's head over to the controller and implement these things. So let's go in the controller, and we need to stop the controller, right? And here I want to implement those two functions, right? And mapped to what? App.get, and I think it was users, the followed, and who's being the followers, okay? And the other one will be the follower, and this is the following, right? Something like that. And the two functions are mirror images of the of our service, right? So find followers, so find const find followers, okay? And the other one is find following, right? Find following, okay? Both of them have request response, okay? They both pull out the ID, this ID. So for followers, we're gonna get the followed from the params request.params.followed. Whereas here we're gonna do the following, right? And in both cases, we need to use a DAO to find these things, right? So let's implement in the, we're gonna implement in the DAO, we're gonna implement these functions, right? Const find followers, and here's the followed user, and this will be the follows model that finds the users that match followed, okay? And then we have also find following, and this is the follower, the ones that match the follower, okay? So once we have that, this is just implementing this. It says const, followers, be DAO dot find followers for the followed, and we're going to respond the followers. And similar here in the following. So this is going to retrieve the find following, and so these are the followers. So these are the following here, and this is going to be the followed, okay, something like that. All right, yeah, so let's try this out. Let's restart the server. So terminal restart. And so let's go back here and let's refresh this, and let's see where we fail. Let's see. Let's go to the network. Let's see. Okay, everything's coming back. 4 something. Blah, blah. Okay, so for the following, it's saying localhost 4000 users, the ID and following, right? So, and it's a get. Let's see, is it not? Let's see the controller. Let's look at the controller. Is it not mapped correctly? Let's see. So I'm sending a get localhost 4000 users, yeah. Then some ID, so some ID, and then following, so following, yeah. Oh, I never mapped it. Find followers. That's a common error. Find following. Okay. Let's see on the chat. Functions. Yes, thank you, Jax. Let's restart the server. Start. Okay, let's go back to the client. Let's refresh. Oops, now this must crash. Oh, the server crash. The server crash. That's a good error. Let's see what's going on here. App.js, blah, 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 blah. Node, person, starting, yada, yada, yada. I'm on the client, service, property, client, yada, yada, yada. Wow, that was a good good error. Let's see what's it complaining about. Let me try. Wait, let me do that again. Oops. Let me run it again. I want to see the error again. Let's refresh. Okay, let's see. Converting circle structure to JSON. Ooh, circle structure. Interesting. Where? Response, blah, 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 follows control, line 13. Line 13. Follower. DAL. Find followers. Define followers. Find followers. Followed. Find model. Followed. Followed. Follow model. Followed. DAL. Find followers. Followed. Let's put a breakpoint and see what's going on. Let's put a breakpoint. Put a breakpoint here and here. And we'll start the server, not from the command line, but from a configuration here. We'd say start with a node. And we will JavaScript will be the node server. It'll be the app.js. Say okay, we'll say okay, and we'll start it in debug mode. Okay. So let's refresh this. Let's refresh. Okay, there we go. So we're in the server. Let's step through. So followed. We have the ID, perfect. Find followers. We're going to step in. Find followers. So here's the followed. So followed dot find followed, and it's AAD. So in the database, there should be an AAD follow. There it is. So I'm matching this followed with that ID. All right. Okay. Let's continue. So it comes back with followers. So follower is what? It's an array of 0. Interesting. Why is it 0? Interesting. Schema, yada, 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 yeah, followed, condition, yada, 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 fine, blah, 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 blah. All right, whatever. So here's followers. And I'm sending that back. Oh, we forgot to put the await. Await and await. Let me start the server. Let's restart it. And not in debug mode. And let's try this out again. Let's refresh. Let's see if the server crashed. Oh no, now my React crashed. Let's see what's going on. What's wrong with this console? Get blah 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 blah. And let's see the network. Let's refresh. Let's see the network. The network come back with something. Network. Oh. Network. And let's see. Okay, so here's followers and following. Let's see what it responds. Okay. Oh, okay. So this time it did come back with an array of followers. and empty for following. Makes sense, makes total sense. My guess is that the data came back, but somehow we're not able to render it. Okay, that's my guess. So in the console, the error we might see, post blah 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 blah, failed to fetch, in promise error not found, error blocked by client, no. Boundary tree. Okay, so let's try and render that, right? We'll go to the React application. Let's try and render it. Let's see. In the public profile, instead of just rendering the object like that, we'll do something like we'll do a UL, right? And we'll say we're going to go and render this. All right, let's do if we'll say, you know, if it's defined, then we're going to map over this, and we have a following, a follow object, and we're going to render a line item, and we are going to render the JSON representation, right? So we're going to say render the JSON representation, a string representation of the object, right? So of the follow object. Okay, and we're going to do the same exact thing for the followers. So this is for the followers, and we'll render that. Right? See, okay, there we go. See that? We do have an object of someone following, of all these followers. Presumably, the follower here is Alice, and it's following AAD. Right? Now it's cumbersome having to parse this as an ID, so we could populate this on the server, right? So we can display maybe the username of the person. Right? So let's do that. So on the server, instead of just returning these objects like that, we're going to populate. The users, right? We're going to populate all the users. So we're going to say populate. So find following. So we're going to populate the following, or the followed, right? And then exec. Question on the chat. Let's see. Could having arrays for followers and following cause difficulty down the road in syncing to users? No. What do you mean? So this is a follower. So let's restart the server here. Let's restart the server. Oh, let's stop here and restart. Let's see. If I go back here and I re-render. Okay, so see, now notice that now the follower object has a username, right? Has a username. So I could, in the React, instead of just rendering the JSON object, I could render the actual follower. Right? Again, I can render the follower dot username. Oops. Follow. Oh no, wait. Of the follow dot follower dot username. There we go. See that, Alice? And I don't need this JSON anymore. Well, I need the ID maybe. Do I have the ID? Okay, I do have the ID. So yeah, you see that? I can now I'm a Bob, and Bob shows that is being it's following Alice, right? So that means that if I go to Alice, let's render this same thing. Let's render this same thing here instead of doing JSON here, right? Of the followed username, right? Which I don't have any. But if I go to Alice's, I should see following, right? So let's go to Alice. See if I can go to Alice's. Alice. It didn't work. What? Why doesn't that work? following. Let's see, why didn't that work? Network, following. Oh, it's empty. Why is it empty as Alice? As Alice, AAA. Following, preview, header. Okay, what's the question? Like a user 1 follows user 2, you'll have to also have user 2 be followed by user 1. Same way on following. Yeah, no, it's only represented once, right? The object has both information, right? Of saying who's the follower and who's following. So you don't have, so it's a two-way relationship, right? It's bidirectional. So you don't have to redundantly have, displayed or recorded twice, right? The object entirely contains all you need, right? Who's doing the following and who's being followed, right? And it only means one thing, right? But it can be read in both ways, right? I can see it from the follower, who are they following, and from following, I can see who's the follower, right? Yeah, I don't know why this is not rendering as Alice. So this is going the following, and the following is coming back as null. So follower and following. Let's see what's going on. So we can put a breakpoint here in the following. Let's go to the controller, following, the breakpoint. Let's restart. And let's refresh. So here's following. The find following. Find following. Oh, it's undefined. Find following. Following. Huh? Oh, I wrote it wrong. So following. So this should be following. Wait, no. Find the people who I'm following. So we need the follower. Okay, so this is follower. Follower. And here's the follower. And here's the people who are being followed. Okay, let's restart the server. Restart. So let's stop there. The terminal. Stop. Oh, no, here. Stop here. There we go. See, this comes back as pause. Right. So again, if I can create a link. I can create a link, right? I can say in the React, in both cases, I can create hyperlinks out of this, right? Maybe this could be a div class, list group, right? And this could be links. So link to, and this could be a class name, list group item, and this and so this would be a link to slash profile slash and then the ID of the user. So this would be follow dot followed dot the ID. See that? So now here, this would be a link. If I click on it, I can navigate to Bob. Oh, no? Huh? Wait, I hover, slash profile, slash ID. Yeah. Oh, no, it's the same ID. Wait, what? Well, I'm already at Alice. I am at Alice. Oh, so it's not followed. So it's follower. 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 Let's see. Oops. What happened? So follow. Follow username. Huh? Oh, yeah, navigated, right? Navigated. Let me go back. So I'm Alice. I hover and I click on Bob. Oh, it doesn't render. Why is it not rendering? Interesting. So it is navigating, but it's not re-rendering. I think that's because we need to find. Okay, yeah, all right. So I'll cover that. I'll post the solution. So basically, this needs to re-render. It needs to re-render, and we have to force it to re-render it if this changes. If this changes, if the URL changes, meaning if the UID changes. So let's. I think we should be able to do UID like that. Okay, let's see. If I click on Bob, there we go. Now it navigates. And same thing for this guy, right? We should be able to render a link here. This could be a div, right? This is a div, like that. And this would be the link to follower, the follower, and this is the follower ID, right? See that? And so I can navigate between the two, and I can see that I'm following you and he's following me. Well, no, I'm following. Alice is following Bob, and when I go to see Bob's profile, it shows that Alice is a follower of Bob. Make sense? All right, excellent. Yeah. So yeah, so if I'm in Bob, I can see that I'm related to a whole bunch of movies. I'm also related to a whole bunch of people, right? And so that's what I mean in the requirements, that if I navigate to somebody's profile, everything that is related to that person should be available in at that profile, right? And that there should be links, right, that allow you to navigate to that thing. So for instance, Bob reviewed these movies, so I can navigate to the details screen of the movie that I reviewed, right? So that was Avatar, or I navigate to Batman, right? And I can see all the details about Batman, right? And if I have links or people who created those links, right? That content, so I can navigate to Alice, Bob, right, and all the movies that Bob has reviewed. Make sense? All right. Yeah. So I'm going to share all this source code with you, and feel free to use it any which way you want. That I hope this is useful to you. What did you do to make it re-render? Yeah. So let me discuss that real quick. So this use effect, right, gets run only once when you first come to this component, and we rendered it. We got the user ID from the parameters, right, from here. We got the user ID from the parameter, and then we went and fetched a whole bunch of things from the server, which created a state change, right, which caused this to re-render. And so we could retrieve the followers and following and the reviews, blah blah blah, and then we rendered, and we're done, right? We're done rendering. Now, even though I'm clicking this and the URL is changing, as far as the component is concerned, it has no reason why to re-render. It says, well, I rendered, the URL changed, but that has not caused a state change in the component, so there's no point in me re-rendering. So this constructor, right, ran once, and that's it. But you can configure it to listen for changes in things, right? And so that's what this square bracket does, right? You can list things that it should listen to. If they change, then force a re-render, right, of a rerunning of this use effect. So what we're doing here is that the UID is changing. Right? We are reading that from the parameters that it's different. So it says, okay, well, if it's the same value from the previous time that I checked it, then I'm not going to re-render. But if it's different, then I am going to re-render. Okay, so I can create dependencies, and so before we were always using an empty array, and what that meant is that I have no dependencies, so I only ever run once whenever the component first loads, and that's it. Right? But if I put here other dependencies on other variables that might change over time, I can cause this to re-render. Right? Okay. All right. What else? Any other questions?
I have some specific questions about assignment 9, but if if you can look at it, that'd be nice.
No, let's do that in the office hours.
Okay.
Tomorrow is 11. Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you. Good night.